The buzz of the fluorescent light in the notary's waiting room was the only sound I could actually trust. My phone was still trembling in my hand when the alert popped up. Another withdrawal from the college account. Not just a small one either. $5,000. Gone. Just like that. I held my breath, staring at the numbers long enough that the edges of my vision blurred. That account was supposed to be sacred. My mom's last gift to me. Her way of making sure my path to independence couldn't be sabotaged by anyone, not even him. And yet, here we were. He was sitting across the room pretending to read a business magazine he probably picked up just to look important. My ex-stepfather. Technically, nothing bound us anymore, not legally, not socially. But the one thing that did remain was that account. Because my mother, God, why did she ever do it, had handed him control of it for simplicity. He hadn't even bothered to look up when the little chime on my phone went off. Maybe he didn't need to. Maybe he already knew exactly what it was. "Stop staring at your phone like it's a weapon," he finally muttered without lifting his eyes. "These things fluctuate. You're young, you don't understand finance." Fluctuate. That was his favorite word. But this wasn't a stock going up and down. This was my tuition evaporating. It felt deliberate, like someone stealing oxygen out of the room and telling me to breathe normally. And the worst part? Sitting in that waiting room, I couldn't scream, couldn't cry, couldn't do anything except sit stiffly, trying not to draw the attention of the couple whispering across from us. I wanted to snap, to tell him I had screenshotted everything, every alert, every suspicious transfer. But I bit it back. If I played my hand now, in public, he'd dance circles around me with his calm tones and dripping condescension. He'd make everyone believe I was just paranoid, or, worse, ungrateful for all the help he claimed he'd given me. So I sat frozen, my chest so tight I thought it might crack open. Everyone believed I had the cool ex-stepdad who still looked out for me after my mom passed. That was the story he curated, the mask he wore at barbecues and birthdays. But behind the mask was this. The man slowly bleeding my future dry, transaction by transaction. The notary finally opened the door, calling us in. He folded his magazine neatly, stood up like this was any other Tuesday, and gave me that crooked half-smile, the kind that always meant he already thought he'd won. My phone was still in my palm, the alert glowing on screen. It felt like holding evidence. It felt like holding fire. And I knew then, this wasn't going to be a meeting about paperwork. It was about a choice. Whether I was going to keep swallowing my words, or finally put them all on the table. But before I could decide, he leaned close and whispered, just for me, "Don't embarrass yourself in there." And that one line lit the fuse. Shall I write the next chapter? I could still hear his whisper echoing in my ear as we stepped into the notary's office. It wasn't just the words. It was the tone. Calm, almost paternal, like he was doing me a favor by keeping me quiet. The way someone would hush a child who didn't understand the big people's business. That was always his weapon. Tone over truth. I sat down across from the polished oak desk, my phone heavy in my lap. The bank alert's glow burned into my memory. The notary, a woman in her 50s with tired eyes, gave us her rehearsed customer service smile. She started pulling out folders and papers, explaining she just needed a signature to confirm the account's representative management going forward. My heart clenched at the phrase. Representative management. That meant him. I remembered the day my mom first explained the arrangement to me. She had been sitting on the couch with a blanket over her knees. The treatments had made her fragile, but her mind was sharp. "It's just for now," she had promised. "He knows the system, and I trust him to make things smooth. But this money is for you." She said it as if her words would become law, as if the mere declaration of her love could protect me. If only she understood how much he thirsted to control the image of being the provider. I couldn't just let it go. That fund was all I had. Without it, my scholarship only covered half of what I needed for college. And that account, the one she had painfully contributed to every paycheck, was my chance to live beyond just surviving. If it slipped away, so would the future she wanted for me. I thought of the sacrifices she made, selling her jewelry, even skipping some of her treatments longer than she should have, to make those deposits. Every number in that account was her body, her hours, her life, and here he was, doodling his name in the margin of a form, the notary nodding along as if he had earned any of it. If I spoke up here, I knew what would follow. His smile turning to a sharp voice, the inevitable accusation of me being dramatic, ungrateful, the kind of girl who ruins reputations because she can't handle reality. Image was his obsession. That's why he clung on. Not love for my mother. Not respect for me. Just the endless satisfaction of being seen as the man who took responsibility for someone else's child. "Do you have any questions before we finalize this?" the notary asked softly, her eyes flicking from him to me. My throat tightened. This was the moment. Do I keep the peace and let him sign away another share of power over me? Or do I break the silence? My heart told me silence would be the real betrayal. Of my mother. Of myself. Suddenly, the vibration in my lap jolted me out of the fog. Another bank alert, this time even bigger. And I knew right then, waiting until later wasn't an option. Something was unraveling faster than I realized. Shall I write the next chapter? The vibration rattled through my entire body like a warning bell. I glanced at my phone under the desk, trying to hide it from both of them. Another withdrawal. This time, 10,000. One swipe of his pen, one smug signature, and my future was being siphoned away in real time. I couldn't breathe. I felt the notary's steady gaze, neutral and businesslike. But my ex-stepfather leaned back casually, arms stretched along the chair as though this was a victory lap. He had no idea the phone in my hand was screaming the truth louder than I could in that room. "Miss?" the notary asked, tilting her head toward me. "Do you have any concerns before we proceed?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. My mind pulled me back through moments I'd brushed aside, all the little signs I should have latched onto. Like the time he insisted, "Lawyer meetings are boring, let me handle them," and shut the door behind him with the folder clutched tight in his hand. Or the nights he told me, "Don't stress yourself with online access. Banks can be tricky to navigate." He kept the login and the answers to the security questions to himself, painting it as protection when it was really restriction. That sickening memory of the phrase, "Your mom trusted me. Try not to complicate things." He'd always dressed it up as guidance, as if keeping me excluded was for my own good. And I let it pass, telling myself I was young, inexperienced, that he might really be shielding me from mistakes. But the withdrawal buzzing in my hand was proof it had never been about protecting me. It was about control. Every omission, every withheld detail, every fake smile across the dinner table had been leading here. "She's fine," he said suddenly, cutting off my silence with a chuckle. He looked at the notary like an amused parent apologizing for a shy child. "She gets nervous. These numbers can look scary if you don't understand them." The heat rose up my neck. Nervous? Numbers too scary for me? He said it for the notary's benefit, setting the power dynamic in stone. The clueless girl and the responsible guardian. He was tightening the narrative in real time, just as neatly as he was draining the account. I could feel my nails pressing crescents into my palm, my chest pushing against the need to scream. The notary tilted back in her chair, almost buying into his calm act. and for a second, I truly considered walking out, keeping the peace, pretending it was fine. But then my eyes flicked to the phone again, the stark numbers confirming another slice cut away from my future. And I knew walking out meant disaster. Still, I stayed silent. Just for now. Because I understood something dangerous in that moment. That if I spoke without proof, he'd twist the knife and bury me beneath his reputation. I needed more than anger. I needed to catch him red-handed. And just as that thought solidified, he leaned closer and whispered again, so low only I could hear. Remember, you wouldn't even have a chance at college without me. Don't forget who's saving you. It didn't feel like saving. It felt like a cage. And I realized then, I wasn't imagining it. I was being robbed in plain sight. But what could I do to actually stop him? Shall I write the next chapter? I left the notary's office with my jaw clenched so tight, I thought my teeth might crack. His whispered words were still buzzing inside my head, like poison. Don't forget who's saving you. Saving me? He was bleeding me dry in slow motion, and in front of everyone else, he wore that damn smile that made him look noble, self-sacrificing, fatherly, and then, as if to drive the knife deeper, he took me to brunch with my aunt and cousins right afterward. He called it celebrating getting the paperwork squared away. Celebrating? I tried to decline, but he squeezed my shoulder in public, steering me forward with that gentle but firm pressure that masqueraded as affection. I didn't want to give him another scene. The brunch table was set under a canopy in my aunt's backyard, cheerful and loud, everyone in clinking glasses and sunny moods. He positioned himself at the head of the table, like it was his rightful place, and launched into his carefully curated tale. I've always been committed to her future, he announced, glancing at me with a gleam in his eye as my cheeks burned. You all know how much responsibility I've taken on. Even after the divorce, I never once thought of stepping back. I'm making sure she goes to college with everything she needs, no matter the cost. No matter the cost. The table erupted in approving nods, and, "Oh, that's so generous of you." My aunt clinked her glass in his direction. My cousin whispered, "You're lucky he still looks out for you." Lucky. I wanted to blurt out the truth in that moment, that the so-called college fund he bragged about was draining like a leaking pipe, that he was stripping me of the very security my mom bled for. But all I could do was sit frozen, staring at the condensation dripping down my water glass, fighting the sting of humiliation. Because if I contradicted him here, if I suddenly snapped at the brunch table, what would they see? Not the truth. Just an ungrateful girl, ruining the goodwill of the man everyone applauded as a savior. Every polite laugh they gave him was like salt in an open wound. And he basked in it. He wanted me boxed into silence, while he stole credit before the only audience that mattered to him, family, because public perception was his currency. And that day, he spent me like he owned me. When the plates were cleared, he leaned back with a contented sigh, looking straight at me as he delivered the line that snapped something inside of me. She'll never have to worry about a thing with me watching out for her. And everyone clapped. Everyone. I smiled weakly for show, but inside, I knew something had shifted. Burning quietly while letting him win was no longer an option. I couldn't keep letting him rewire the truth in front of their eyes. I needed to prove it. To everyone. I needed something undeniable. And if he thought I was too afraid, or too naive to go digging, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. Because right after brunch, I decided to get my hands dirty. Shall I write the next chapter? That night, I sat on the edge of my bed with every light in my room blazing. My phone was open to the bank alerts, each one like a bruise staring back at me. withdrawal after withdrawal, each bigger than the last. And then? The transfer memo I hadn't noticed before. I zoomed in on the fine print, my fingers trembling. It wasn't tuition related. It wasn't fees. It was going to an account marked with his name. Not even discreetly, just his surname followed by the word consulting. I actually laughed out loud in shock. A cracked, almost hysterical sound that startled me. Consulting? He didn't have a business. He didn't even have clients. That account was a funnel. He was just siphoning straight from my future into his pocket, dressing it up as something official. I began digging, clicking through every transaction history I could access with the limited logins I had. Some of the transfers stretched back months, small ones at first, hundreds here, maybe 1,000 there, just low enough to keep me asleep. Then, slowly, like heat rising in water, they got bigger, bolder. He'd been planning this for a long time. But what really broke me was stumbling on the PDF copy buried in my email archives. My mother's name, his name, a notarized instruction letter from the year before she passed, her signature shaky, scribbled from a hospital bed, authorizing him as the fund's acting representative. I pressed my palm hard against my lips, tears streaking down uncontrollably. She didn't know. She never could have imagined he'd twist it like this. She was thinking of convenience, of paperwork being easier handled by someone who knew the system. She had no idea she was handing over a weapon. When I looked closer, the letter revealed something he must have thought I'd never notice. A provision that stated, in good faith, he'd preserve the principal until my enrollment period began. In good faith. My stomach turned. Evidence was sitting right there, black and white, with his signature and all. It was dynamite. I saved everything, screenshots, PDFs, every alert, and backed it up twice. Once on a USB tucked deep in my drawer, once in the cloud under a hidden folder name. Suddenly, I wasn't just a paranoid kid with feelings. I had proof. But proof meant nothing if I didn't use it. What was the risk if I dragged him into the light? Everyone still adored him. Everyone had swallowed his savior role whole. If I burned this bridge, I wouldn't just alienate him. I might lose half my extended family, too. I felt my mother's blanket still draped across my bed and curled it against my chest. I heard her voice, her promise. This money is for you. And in that moment, something hardened inside me. Silence was over. Tomorrow, I was taking everything to the lawyer. Shall I write the next chapter? Morning light streamed through my blinds like a spotlight, harsh and merciless, as if the day itself was forcing me to act. Sleep had been impossible. My stomach twisted into knots the whole night, replaying every smug smile, every whispered jab he'd made. By sunrise, the decision was final. I wasn't waiting anymore. I walked into the lawyer's office with my hands clammy around the folder I'd prepared. Every screenshot, every bank alert, every PDF, printed neatly, stacked in chronological order. It felt like I was carrying a bomb. If I opened it in the right room, everything would detonate. He was already there, of course. Always half an hour early. Always eager to convince people he was organized, reliable, essential. He greeted the lawyer with a warm handshake, telling some story about a golf fundraiser he chaired recently. The perfect community man. The mask slipped right back on, effortless. I stayed silent, letting him spin. Because today wasn't about his words. It was about evidence. Now, the lawyer began pleasantly, we're just revisiting the account management since we had a few questions arise around the usage schedule. Questions. My heart pounded at that word. He laughed gently, looking between us. Oh, I'm sure it's just her nerves again. You know how young people? He waved his hand dismissively, leaning back with his legs crossed, fully expecting everyone to nod along. That's when I pushed the folder forward across the polished desk. The slap of paper hitting wood seemed to slice the smugness off his face for a fraction of a second. He straightened, smile flickering. The lawyer opened the folder. The first page, a printed bank alert screenshot with the memo line reading, transfer, his last name, consulting. Then another, and another. The silence was unbearable. The lawyer's eyes grew sharper with each page, flipping faster until he reached the notarized instruction letter with the good faith clause. He looked up slowly, fixing his gaze not on me, but on him. "Can you explain these transfers?" the lawyer asked, voice calm but edged like glass. My ex-stepfather chuckled, leaning forward now, hands steepled. "Liquidity management," he said smoothly. "It's common practice. I was creating flexibility. The funds are safe." "Liquidity management into a personal account?" the lawyer pressed, sliding the papers closer to him. "That is a breach of fiduciary duty." For the first time, the cracks showed. His jaw stiffened, nostrils flaring. He shifted his weight, too visibly trying to maintain composure. "Don't make this bigger than it is. I've covered her expenses, haven't I? I'm the one who's been keeping her afloat since her mother." "Enough," I blurted, my voice sharper than I expected. Trembling, yes, but clear. "Stop pretending this is about generosity. Mom left that fund for me, not for you. And it's not your reputation I'm protecting anymore. It's my future." The words lodged in the air like iron. For the first time, he didn't have an immediate comeback. Only the tight twitch of his lips, the panic seeping into his carefully built persona. The lawyer tapped the pages on the desk, eyebrows knitting. "We'll need to discuss legal remedies. Effective immediately." For the first time, the room belonged to me, not him. But what I didn't yet realize was that this small victory, this crack in his facade, was about to trigger an explosion in the family big enough to pull everyone into the fire. Shall I write the next chapter? He didn't storm out right away. That would have been too honest for him. Instead, he sat there as the air thickened, his fake composure cracking with each second he failed to regain control. Finally, with a curt smile that looked more like a grimace, he muttered, "We'll revisit this with the family. She doesn't understand the bigger picture yet." The lawyer didn't even look up from reshuffling the papers. "There is no bigger picture. The account is not yours to borrow from. I'll prepare the documents to shift all management rights immediately." That was the first time I'd truly seen fear flash across his eyes. He left with a tight nod, his every movement suddenly rigid, as if keeping his body underperforming would somehow preserve his slipping mask. But within 24 hours, the fallout began. My aunt called first. Her tone was sharp, clipped, the same tone she used when I was 16 and caught lying about curfew. "What exactly are you trying to do to him?" she demanded. "He's telling everyone you're making wild accusations, jealous of everything he spent on you." My throat knotted. "Jealous? Aunt Helen, he's been pulling from my fund. It's in the statements. I showed a lawyer." She cut me off. "You've always been overly dramatic, dear. He stepped up when your father wasn't here. You should be grateful, not tearing him down in front of people." I almost dropped the phone. Overly dramatic. Ungrateful. My exact fears spilling through her mouth as if he'd written the script for her. He knew his audience well. Then came the cousin group chat. At first, silent judgment. Messages piling in between them, but nothing directed at me. Then finally, one brave ping. Not cool airing family drama legally. Could have talked it out first. I closed the app, my hands shaking. Talk it out. Every attempt at talking it out ended with me gaslit and belittled. The reversal had started. His story was spreading faster than mine could catch up. He painted himself as the man blindsided by an ungrateful stepdaughter who turned on him after all he gave her. I wanted to scream, to post every receipt, to plaster the screenshots across social media so no one could deny the truth. But the thought of dragging my mother's name into this circus stopped me cold. Her trust was already twisted into a weapon. Wouldn't public humiliation just be another desecration of her memory? The only voice that steadied me was the lawyer's. He called the next morning after filing the documents. "I'm accelerating this. The account will be locked for any further withdrawals until transfer completes. You'll have full control within days." Relief washed over me like cold water, but it didn't burn away the ache of being crucified in my own family's whispers. It broke something different inside me, the illusion that we all saw him for what he really was. That evening, another message came in, this time from my aunt again. Just one sentence. "We're having dinner Sunday. We'll all talk this through." Every cell in my body knew what that meant. An ambush. Him at the table, family gathered around, me in the hot seat. And still, I had to go. Because now the proof wasn't just in a folder. It was in me. And I was done being small. Shall I write the next chapter? Sunday evening, I sat at my aunt's dining table, the heavy chandelier light glaring down like an interrogation lamp. The long oak table was crowded. Uncles, cousins, a couple of family friends even, all invited under the pretense of just dinner. Everyone had plates in front of them, but no one was eating. It was clear this wasn't about food. And there he was, seated at the opposite end, wearing that practiced expression of dignified patience. My ex-stepfather. His shoulders relaxed, his hands folded neatly, like a man under unreasonable attack, who was still noble enough to sit through it with grace. It made me want to scream. "I think we all know why we're here," my aunt started, setting her napkin down deliberately, as if she were presiding over some tribunal. "It's concerning that legal threats have been made within the family before simple discussions." I opened my mouth, but he spoke first. Always first. "I only ever acted in her best interest," he said softly, almost mournful. "Her mother entrusted me when she was too young to handle these responsibilities. I never touched that account for myself. Every cent I moved was temporary, to keep things steady. And now," he sighed, shaking his head, "now I'm being accused, dragged into lawyers' offices, my integrity questioned." Murmurs rippled around the table. I could feel my cousin's eyes on me, pity mixed with skepticism. He had them wrapped around his narrative. I clenched my fists. "That's not true." My voice cracked but steadied as I pressed forward. "I have proof. Transfers into your personal account. Memo lines that literally say your name. Screenshots. Bank alerts." He leaned back, smiling that bitter smile. Screenshots are easy to misunderstand. Maybe she saw something she didn't recognize. She's young. Financial literacy isn't her strength. There it was again. The gaslight. The subtle character assassination. He knew exactly how to plant doubt. Make me seem emotional, naive, incapable. I pulled the USB stick from my pocket and placed it on the table with a sharp clink. Everyone stared at it. "It's all here," I said, forcing my voice not to tremble. "The bank records, the notary letter, his own signature. If any of you doubt me, plug this in yourselves. The truth doesn't disappear because he talks prettier than I do." For the first time that evening, his composure cracked, his jaw tightened, and his hand twitched against the tablecloth. He hadn't expected me to put it so brazenly in front of them all. The silence that followed was different. Heavy, electric. My aunt's lips parted like she wanted to defend him, but the lawyer's words echoed in my own head. Fiduciary duty. My cousins exchanged wary glances. The shift was small, but I saw it. the first seed of doubt planted in their minds. He tried once more, his voice suddenly sharp. "Do you really think sabotaging me will bring her mother back? She trusted me. Are you calling your mother a fool?" That hit like a gut punch. Tears stung my eyes at the cruelty of it, but I didn't look away. "I'm saying my mother loved me enough to believe you'd do the right thing. And you proved to her memory that she was wrong." The room went dead still. It was no longer about me being dramatic. The cracks in his mask were now visible to everyone. And I knew. Next came the explosion. Shall I write the next chapter? The explosion came faster than I expected. He slammed his palm on the table so hard that glasses clattered and one nearly tipped. His voice, no longer measured or coated in sweetness, broke through the room like a cracking whip. "You have no idea what you're saying," he barked. "Everything I've ever done for you, everything, has been twisted into some paranoid accusation. You think lawyers and folders full of screenshots make you right? You think you're smarter than me? You'd still be waiting tables if it weren't for me carrying the responsibility your mother left behind." The mask was gone. The polished man who thrived on image control slipped, and what came spilling out was raw, exposed rage. His face flushed red, and he stared at me with the kind of contempt I used to only imagine he felt when the doors were closed. The table erupted in nervous gasps. My aunt muttered his name in a brittle warning tone. My younger cousins stared wide-eyed, gripping her fork as if afraid he would leap across the table. For the first time, they were seeing what I had been living with. Not the benevolent provider, but the tyrant beneath. I didn't move. I just met his fury with a calm I didn't know I had. Quietly, I slid the USB stick across the glossy wood until it landed in front of my aunt. "Check it," I said. My voice didn't waver. "Check every file, then look me in the eye and tell me this isn't happening." The silence after that was suffocating. He looked around like a drowning man, searching for someone willing to throw him a rope. But the room was shifting. He had played the savior for years. Now they had seen his temper spill through the cracks. And with the evidence looming physical in front of them, his narrative wasn't airtight anymore. He pointed a shaking finger across the table at me. "You'll regret this. You think you can turn the family against me? Do you have any idea how much I've sacrificed for all of you?" He pivoted his gaze to my aunt, his voice suddenly desperate. "Helen, you know what she's like. Overreacting, exaggerating, just like always. Don't let her ruin everything." But my aunt didn't immediately rush to his defense the way she always had. Instead, she hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the USB, then back to him, and something unsettled lingered there. That hesitation said more than words. It told me I wasn't as alone as I thought. I leaned forward, locking my gaze on him. "This isn't about me ruining anything. This is about you stealing what was never yours. And after tonight, no amount of charm, no amount of lies, no amount of damage control will undo the fact that we all saw what you just showed us." He froze. For one moment, the pure hatred in his eyes was naked, enough to make my skin crawl. Then, with a sharp scrape of his chair, he stood abruptly. "You want war? Fine." He threw his napkin onto the table like a white flag made into a curse. "But don't come crawling back when you realize you've destroyed this family over money." He stormed out without another word, the front door slamming a second later. The house settled into uneasy silence, the kind that comes after a storm has ripped through. Everyone sat frozen, trying to process what they just witnessed. And I sat there, trembling but unbroken, knowing the hardest part wasn't winning the battle. It was surviving the aftermath, because he wasn't going to disappear quietly. Shall I write the next chapter? The hours after that dinner felt like walking through the ruins of a house struck by lightning. Silence clung to everything. My aunt just stared at the USB like it might bite her. My cousins avoided my eyes, their faces caught between loyalty to the image of the man they admired and the shards of truth cutting through their illusions. But I knew the storm wasn't over. The very next morning, the consequences began. My phone lit up with 3 missed calls from unknown numbers, then a voicemail from my cousin Mark. He's furious, says you've embarrassed him in front of the family. He's threatening to make sure no one helps you anymore. Tuition, housing, anything. Just be careful, okay? Be careful. It was exactly the kind of warning that meant he was planning something drastic. The ugly truth was that, on paper, he still had temporary access until the lawyer completed the transfer process, which gave him just enough time to wreak havoc. By noon, my worst fear flashed onto my screen. Transfer pending, $15,000. He was trying to gut the account before it could be locked down. My stomach churned. I called the lawyer so fast my fingers fumbled the keypad. Thankfully, the lawyer answered on the first ring. I barely got the words out before he cut in, steady and firm. It won't clear. I placed the freeze this morning. That's exactly why I moved so quickly. The relief came in a dizzy wave, but it didn't erase the fact that he had tried. He was cornered now, and cornered men lash out. Later that evening, my aunt messaged me, finally. Her tone was cautious, but different from before. I saw the files. I need time to process. But he isn't who I thought he was. It wasn't an apology, not a pledge of support, just a sliver of acknowledgement. Strangely, it was enough. For years it had been my word against his silence and his smiles. Now, finally, someone else admitted aloud that cracks in his mask were real. But the relief was short-lived, because at midnight a group chat pinged. A new one. Family members I barely spoke to, all added, with a title across the top, Truth About the Fund. And his name was there, sending a long, venomous paragraph painting me as a manipulator, claiming I had siphoned money, that I was waging war over greed, not justice. I sat frozen, staring at the messages piling up, his story rewriting itself in real time. He wasn't stopping. He was escalating. If he couldn't steal my money anymore, he was going to try and steal my reputation. And the uglier truth. Some people in the chat were believing him. As I scrolled through the barrage of half-accusations, half-questioning whispers, a thought crystallized like glass in my chest. This wasn't just about the fund anymore. This was a custody battle for the truth. A war over the version of me the family would remember. And, if I didn't fight harder, his story would win. Shall I write the next chapter? The group chat became a battlefield overnight. By the time I woke up, there were 96 unread messages, half of them from him, the other half from family debating like spectators at a circus. He was pouring his version of events in long monologues. I sacrificed my own stability for her. I paid bills you don't even know about. Now she's punishing me because gratitude doesn't come easy to some people. And then the subtle dagger. If her mother were alive, she'd be ashamed of how she's treating me. That sentence nearly broke me. He had no limit. He was willing to wield my mother's memory like a sword, stabbing me with guilt while polishing his halo in front of everyone else. Some messages cut deeper than I expected. An older cousin typing. Honestly, she has struggled with dramatizing stuff before. He may not be perfect, but he's been there more than anyone for her. My cheeks burned as if I had been slapped. Was the mountain of proof invisible to them? Was my pain that easy to dismiss in favor of his carefully crafted role? But then, a smaller flicker appeared. A message from my cousin Lily, the quiet one, usually invisible in group discussions. I've seen statements too. She showed them to me. He isn't telling the whole truth. For a moment, the chat stalled. A beat of silence in the digital chaos. He fired back instantly, of course. "She's manipulating you, Lily. Don't let her drag you into her bitterness." But the momentum wasn't as smooth anymore. His certainty was cracking. That momentary support gave me courage, but also a new strategy. If his weapon was reputation, then my counterstrike wasn't just legal, it had to be visible. So I typed slowly, deliberately, knowing every word needed to slice through fog. "This isn't about bitterness. This is about proof. Transfers with his name on them. A notarized letter he violated. And a bank freeze protecting what's left of my future. If anyone wants to see it, I have every document." I hit send. My fingers trembled, but a strange surge of power hummed through me. My truth wasn't quiet anymore. It was public. The typing bubbles exploded. Some avoided commenting. Others cautiously asked if they could actually see the files. For the first time, the narrative wasn't entirely his. That's when, desperate, he shifted gears. His next message wasn't denial. It was a threat cloaked in martyrdom. "If you push this lie any further, you'll regret destroying the only person who ever fought for you. Don't think the law can protect you from the consequences of alienating family." The chat fell silent after that. An ugly silence. I stared at the screen, pulse hammering. It wasn't just financial now. It was personal warfare. He was threatening isolation, maybe worse. My lawyer could protect the money. But who was going to protect me from the backlash he was igniting? One thing was clear. This wouldn't be won with screenshots alone. The next step had to be face-to-face. No chat filters, no whispers behind screens. Just him, me, and the undeniable evidence in the cold air where lies couldn't breathe as easily. So I made up my mind. I was going to confront him directly. On my terms this time. Shall I write the next chapter?